Okay, so this is the Hi Year 10. This is the second little video that I'm doing just on some of the quotes from Act 1 that I've put up on your task for Friday. So this is Act 1, Scene 3. This is our first meeting with Macbeth. He is with Banquo and happens to come across the witches. So the witches at the start of this scene are having a discussion about how they've been torturing a wife and the sailor's wife, and then midway through the scene, the stage direction ends to Macbeth and Banquo appears around kind of line 35. So the very first words that we hear from Macbeth as a character in the play are here. So foul and fair a day I have not seen. Okay, so if we just take that line on its own, it almost sounds quite similar to the witches. If we return to Act 1, Scene 1, the words that the witches say is fair is foul and foul is fair, which we know are contradictory statements. If something is fair, it can't be foul, and if something is foul, it can't be fair. So, the opening scene from The Witches, I suppose that line is all about things aren't what they seem, and that's what the entire play is about. Things are not what they seem. Deception is a key theme, and appearances. So deception and appearances are really important. So it's interesting then that the very first appearance of Macbeth on stage, he almost mimics the witches and how they speak. So he says, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. And again, if we think about the idea of something being foul, being kind of revolting, being perhaps off, really contrasts with the adjective of something being fair. We could take fair in two ways, to mean beautiful, but also to mean something being just. So here it hints already the power the witches have over Macbeth. That his language is already being impacted by them. So again, what could you talk about? You could talk about the use of antithesis with the adjectives foul and fair. This idea that doesn't make sense. So already that we're in a world that isn't quite the norm. So then in the scene we've got the first description of the witches comes from Banquo. He says that they look not like inhabitants of the earth, that they have skinny lips and choppy fingers and beards. And it's actually Macbeth who speaks to them first. So I've chosen this quote here: stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. And obviously here we've got just going to highlight that for you. We've got these imperative verbs. I'm just going to go back and highlight the two adjectives there. So we've got imperative verbs from Macbeth. And this isn't the first time that we see this. So the very first thing that he says to the witches is speak, if you can. So this dominating and demanding kind of persona perhaps matches the warrior that we were introduced to in Act 1, Scene 2. So speak if you can, what are you? And then this is where they say, all hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis, Thane of Cawdor, King hereafter. And obviously Macbeth doesn't know that Duncan is considering making him Thane of Cawdor at this point. So this is new to him. So they tell him this, and this is how he responds: "Stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more." He then repeats, Shakespeare repeats, "Speak again." So "speak, I charge you," then comes later at line 77. So we've got "speak if you can," which is on line 46. And then we've got, again, these imperative verbs. What does this show us then? It shows us that Macbeth is taking the words of the witches seriously. He understands what they're saying, or he tries to understand. And this contrasts quite interestingly with Banquo, because Banquo is quite cautious. He talks about this idea of "have we eaten?" So Banquo states, "have we eaten on the insane route?" So this is a real contrast with Banquo, who refers to, so we've got this metaphor of, have we taken drugs? He doesn't believe the witches. He doesn't believe they were there. He doesn't believe in their existence. And this is really important. We're going to have a look a bit later on about AO3 in context and witchcraft. Witchcraft, I suppose, was as popular in Shakespeare's time as Brexit has been topical in our kind of lifetime. And the king himself wrote a book called Demonology, and he was very much against witchcraft. He believed in witchcraft. He thought that witches were out there. He was very much against witchcraft. And so the fact that don't discard the fact that King Duncan would have been sat potentially in the audience watching this, and we've got somebody who should be our hero, perhaps Macbeth, the eponymous character in the play. The play is named after him. Already taking him seriously, demanding that they tell him more, demanding that they stay, and that contrast with perhaps Banquo, who is, the sense of the voice of reason, perhaps, that he doesn't believe them. Later on in this scene, so after we've had the root metaphor from Banquo, Ross and Angus, who are other things, they appear, and are talking to them about the king. And this is where, towards the end of the scene, we get this interesting quote here, look. And it's Macbeth. And he says, "If chance will have me king, why, chance may crown me without my stir." Okay, so if we look at the definition of chance, here we go. It's repeated in here as well, look. So we've got the use of repetition of that noun chance. So chance, fortuitous, accidental, occurrence of events in the absence of any obvious intention or cause. So this is Macbeth saying this again. If chance may have me king, so if by accident I may be king, why will chance will crown me without me doing anything? And that's really interesting, because hopefully earlier in the week you've looked at the chain of being. This idea that the Elizabethans believed that at the top of the chain of being would be God. God makes the decisions. It was a predominantly Christian society. So you were born into the monarchy. You couldn't become the king. I could never become a queen. I can't be born into the monarchy. So Macbeth is never supposed to be the king. So here he's talking about chance, accident, fortune making him king. Now, he would be fully aware, having just fought for his country and as king, that his place in the chain does not allow him to become king. So here we already see the power of the witches, how his mind has perhaps already been poisoned with ambition. And that's interesting, because a lot of people think that Lady Macbeth is the, I suppose, catalyst in Macbeth's downfall. But here we can see how he listens to the witches, he takes on the language of the witches, he commands the witches, and he begins to talk about chance. And that idea of without stir, if you stir something, you obviously you can stir cooking wise, and that can be a catalyst for something. Here he's talking about without my stir, so without his involvement. So he thinks that this is written in the stars. He believes it's his fate to become the king. which, like I've just said, here we see that potentially that his mind has already been poisoned. Okay.